Welcome back to Stuff About Money podcast. I am Erik Garcia, certified financial planner. And today I am excited. I have two guests on today. It's rare that we have two guests, but we'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. And I'll kind of give you the context and the setup for our conversation today. But this is an extension of a conversation that we were having a couple weeks ago, watching our beloved Pelicans beat the LA Clippers, working their way up in the West. So pretty excited. So y'all know Matt Morris. Dr. Matt Morris is a longtime friend of the show. And we're going to have Michael Baudin here, who's we've been talking about getting Michael on for a long time. Michael and I have been, but this is his first time on. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Matt tell us a little bit about himself. Then Michael, you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're just going to jump into our topic.
All
Dr.
right,
Matt?
man. Thanks for having me on again. We had a conversation at watching the Pelicans, we've now nicknamed the Murder Birds because they're smoking up the Western Conference. They're currently, as of today, sitting in fourth place. So we're excited about that. Beyond being a Pelicans fan, I'm a couples therapist and professor of marriage and family therapy at the University of Holy Cross. So I regularly spend time working with people and couples, trying to enhance or improve or optimize their life and relationship in some way. And I think that's going to be important for this conversation today.
Huge. Yeah, Matt's profession is going to come into play. Matt's kind of like our resident counselor. So whenever we need to talk about like behavior or mental health or like
How do you feel
life,
about that?
we bring Matt in pro bono, which is great. And then Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Thanks for having me on. Been a long time coming.
You think I've been avoiding you, right?
Nah, we just couldn't find the right topic. Okay. And we came across it. But so Erik and I have been, I would say, business friends for 15 years now. We met in a networking.
That long, huh?
It feels like it. 15, 14 years.
I had hair back then. You probably had a little bit more yourself.
Yeah, I probably had a little more too. But no, we met, both grew up, in a networking, at some networking events. We had a networking group that we were part of, and just grew up businesses kind of the same trajectory. I do kitchen and bath design and remodeling. So I grew it from basically nothing. And here today to talk about what I think Erik will lead us into, but some work-life balance and how that comes into play with what we do.
Yeah, so there's a common thread between the three of us, other than being Pelicans fans and being friends, is the three of us are entrepreneurs. So the context of our conversation is from the lens of entrepreneurs. So I know a lot of my clients and a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs. And as Michael said, actually the three of us, Michael and I were friends. Matt and Michael are fairly, I would say, newer friends. We kind of became friends through me being that the common person. But the three of us, our businesses all kind of grew together. So we were on this entrepreneurial journey together. So for me, it's kind of fun to sit here and reflect and think about where the three of our businesses have come. Again, you two are just getting to know each other better now. So y'all weren't in the early stages, but Matt and I would get together and we would have our business planning sessions every year. Shark Tank, that's what we called them. We'd present our business plans to each other. Michael and I it wasn't that formal, but it's not uncommon over the past 14, 15 years for Michael and I to get together and talk shop, talk business, talk staff, talk finances, talk everything that has to do with business. So the conversation the other night at the basketball game, Matt posed the question about executive coaching and just this idea of engaging an executive coach for business professionals or high performing leaders that wanted to improve on kind of improve where they are in life. It could be improve a particular relationship, improve finances, improve as a leader. And that launched us into this conversation about work-life balance. And like 5 minutes in the conversation, I'm like, ooh, we need to have this conversation on the podcast. This is fantastic. So that's what we're talking about, work-life balance. And I want to start off by asking Matt a question. And I really only have a couple of questions, and we'll just see where this conversation goes. But Matt, being a family therapist who specializes in working with couples, talk to us a little bit about why is work-life balance such a big thing that people are pursuing? And before you answer, let me kind of draw a quick analogy. And I think this will kind of help us maybe put it in context. Whenever I meet with people, budgeting always comes up. Whenever we're talking about personal finance, everyone feels that they should have a budget. Everyone feels guilty that they don't stick to a budget. Everyone feels like they've got to figure that out before they can do anything else. I kind of feel like work-life balance is similar. If you bring it up in a business setting, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I gotta figure this part of my life out," or I'm a little out of balanced here. And sometimes it feels like this thing that we're chasing or that we have to get in order. Why is that?
Yeah. To just add to your statement there, I think, most couples that I sat down with in the initial, session of couples therapy would, if I brought up the concept of work-life balance, every one of them just about would say, yeah, we need that. So it is like conceptually an idea that everybody feels like they need more of, or some version of. And I don't know if it's in our language that we use work-life balance. It's such a common phrase that everybody feels like they need it. But I do think it's more than that. And this is going to get heavy, so hang on for a second. You're asking me why it's important, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Why is it
I
something
think
that seems so innate to the human condition that we want to
I'm going to give you a psychology answer, okay?
Okay. All right.
I think it's important because the clock is ticking. You hear a clock, you hear it, there's a clock ticking. I am 47 years old. How many days do I have left?
Hmm.
How many weeks, Erik, do you have left?
Hmm.
At 47, if I live to be 85, that means I have 2,000 more weeks left on this planet. That means I have 2,000 more weekends, 2,000 more Mondays, 2,000 more. The work week is so integral to how we think about our life, how we organize our life, how we plan our life, how we plan our year. I got 2,000 more weeks left. That's it. And at some point, if I make it to 85, I got 2,000, but I might not. I might die along the way. That's it. That is my life. And now, how do I want to fill those weeks? How do I want to fill those weekends? What do I want to accomplish? Who do I want to be close to? And how am I going to fit it all in? This question you're asking, why is work-life balance important? It's important because it's existential. It's about my own existence and who I am as a person, and the short time that I have on this planet before I leave. This is it.
Yeah, Michael, he didn't get this deep on us at the
I
basketball
know,
game.
right?
The words like existential. Like, I don't even know. I went to New Orleans public
It,
schools,
it
man. Come on.
matters because it matters.
Guys.
There is a clock
Right.
ticking in
So
your soul.
I'm holding
going-
up here, our listeners, unless you're on YouTube, you won't be able to see this, but it's a yellow sticky, and it says, "Time is undefeated. Operate with urgency." So I've got that posted to my monitor. So as you were saying that, I was thinking about this idea of man, operate with urgency. Time's undefeated. Like we, in your words, our clock is ticking. Michael, what do you, or Matt? I don't know if you're done going deep on us, but Michael, what are your thoughts on what Matt said? Why is this topic so important? Why is it important to you?
It's tough to follow up on that one. I didn't know he was going there with it, but
That's he's a doctor. He does
I
things
know.
like that. He
He
kind of
does
takes you
that,
deep,
yeah.
and then
Bring the heat.
So I guess to take it back to what we were originally gonna talk about a little bit until Matt went there on us.
Go ahead.
We had kind of talked about like a young entrepreneur coming to you and saying, "Hey, you've been through it. I'm in this stage right now of I have a family, I have this business that's I'm 2 years into, and like how do you find that balance, right?" And that person who might be 27, 28, 29, 30, they're not going to be hearing that clock as much as we may, but to that person, the work-life balance is different than what we would look at it as. So to go back to that, the more shallow question versus the deeper one, you know, I would tell him or her just that the word balance, right? We talked about this word, and
Well, hold on, let me
I-
pause you real quick before we get into the
okay.
balance. I think you said a couple things that are really important that I don't think they're shallow. I think they align with what Matt's saying. I think
Right.
Matt's just saying it a
I
little
didn't,
bit differently.
it's not shallow. It's not as deep on the, thought processes,
Yeah, no,
how
I
much
think
time I have left on this earth.
I think that what I appreciate about this because we all approach this topic a little bit differently. And that's what I like about the three of us having this conversation. So what Matt talked about was, man, the clock's ticking. There's this idea that like we're running out of time. Let's make sure that we're leaving the legacy that we want to leave. And Matt, correct me. Let me know if I'm putting the words wrong. Like I want to do the things that are important to me while I have time. And Michael, what you're talking about is almost like stages of entrepreneurship. Like we might not hear the clock, but there's still important things that we want to do, or there's still an urgency of we want to accomplish certain things. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So let's define really quickly, and then we can go a little deeper about where you're going, Michael. What is Matt when you hear someone come to you? I don't even know. Maybe do people talk to you like, hey, Dr. Matt, like, I mean, maybe if you're doing a couple situation, maybe it's one of the spouses saying, hey, he needs more work-life balance. He spends too much
Yeah.
time doing X, Y, and
Right.
Z. What do we mean by work-life balance? Like let's have a
Yeah,
working definition.
I think we can start by defining what it's not. And so, and I'm kind of off the cuff here. I don't have this in front of me, but it doesn't mean that you don't work, and it doesn't mean that you don't work hard. Doesn't mean that you don't work a lot. That's not what work-life balance means. Work-life balance means you're able to prioritize your work goals and your personal goals and your relationship goals. You're able to prioritize all of those things. So you, Erik, you, Michael, you work and you work hard and you're productive. And that is an important part of your identity and important part of your life, your family life. And then you also each have things that you're interested in. Those are personal things to you. And then you have people who love you that want to spend time with you. And so work-life balance is just the right mix at the right time I'm using the word balance, to balance each of those three domains.
Yeah, and I've heard different people say, and I think Michael, was it you? Was it you who threw the word harmony out the other night?
Yes.
Okay, so I've heard a couple people
And
like
kind of,
work
yeah,
life.
based off of what Matt was saying though, like I think it's all in where you are in your life at that point in time. And it's not so much like I feel like there's work. It's basically like if you had $1, right? You got 4 quarters, or you could break it down even more to nickels and dimes. But like work would be 25%, your family, i.e., wife, kids, would be another 25. So that'd be 50, and or husband. And then you got yourself that you always have to think about. And I think you were talking about that. And I think at any point, depending on where you are in that, let's just talk about work, like where you are in growing your business, where you are in like that, there might be nights where you work till 6, but then there's a networking event that you really need to go to if you need to get it to that next level. Like there's going to be people there you want to talk to. So like, but the family has to be on board with it. The family has to understand, like, all right, dad might not be here tonight, or mom might not be here tonight because they have to go do this event, but they don't necessarily need to know like what your ultimate goals are, but like, that, hey, this is important to me and this is important to growing my business.
Yeah.
And, they would have to understand that. So maybe you're at one point in your life, you're giving 50% to work and the other 3 things are getting 50% split up in between them. you know, but there's always that last one that people forget about is like self, right? I love to work out. I love to go to Pelicans games. I love to do that stuff. And it's just like finding that time. So now I wake up super early, get a workout in the morning, and it doesn't affect anything, but
Yeah.
it helps me to do that. So there's always that. And we brought up harmony because I feel like it's more like if you can get those things singing together, it'll work. You know, if everybody's on board, if everything's flowing, it's like a band. You might have more guitar, you might have more vocals, you might have more, but it's all harmonious and it sounds good in the end. Where you fall off, and what Matt was saying is like when that spouse feels something different about the way you work, and that's when the harmony might drop off. Or, you know,
That's when you call Dr. Matt.
Yeah, you're sacrificing, you know, going to the gym, or you're sacrificing doing something that you and makes you feel good for like a short amount of time. And then you get upset with yourself and everything gets thrown off of balance, you know, like, so there's a lot of layers to it, but I think if you can figure it out and just, it all depends on, to me, it all depends on where you are in that, in your life.
I think it's really helpful. Let me tie the two things that y'all just said together real quick here. I think it's really helpful to look at it, Matt, how you're defining what it's not. And you said it's not, you didn't use this word in particular, but this is the word I thought about. It's not like perfect equilibrium across, as Michael said, the different parts of your life. And I think, Michael, what you're talking about, and I think there's a ton of truth to this. And I think that if people can start here, I think this helps in trying to figure this, solving this problem in your own life, is that it's seasonal, right? There's these seasons of, I'm going to have to work harder. I'm going to have to, my family's going to demand more time of me. I may take longer vacations. I may have to spend more time on self-care. And I think when you look at it from that perspective, that work-life balance, because I think of balance, like you think of like the scales of balance, right? You think of like the blind justice and this balance, and everything has to like be perfectly in line. And I think I don't like that word. In fact, I think work-life balance, I kind of reject that idea. I think it's a unicorn that we chase, that balance doesn't exist. Yeah,
That's why I use the word harmony.
I like the phrase work-life balance. I don't have a problem with it, but I
used
to. I understand, like, if balance means something like perfectionism to you, or some sort of like the right, if I could just find the right distribution of my resources, my time, everything will be fine. If that's
what the word, that's kind of what the word implies. That's what balance implies. And I think maybe
right.
It's just semantics, but the word balance means like everything isn't perfect equilibrium. I've got terrible balance. I'm 6'3", my center of gravity's high. You know,
Awkward.
my wife on the contrary, she's a former gymnast. She's got perfect balance, man. Like I can't like I'll fall. So I think a balance, like everything has to be in equilibrium. If something's off, everything falls. And that's how I translate it in like work-life balance. Like, man, if something is out just a little bit, then it's problematic.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that the phrase is so popular and so ubiquitous because it must speak to somebody. It's a phrase people have latched onto. So
I would say yes, but I would say yes. It's so ubiquitous, we use it all the time, but we don't stop to think about what it really means.
Right, what the words are.
Like, what does it mean? And I think that's the heart of it. See, for me, it's less about balance. It's more about and this ties a little bit about what Michael was saying here, is here's these parts of my life that are important to me, that I value. I value my health. I value my time with my family. I value impacting clients positively when it comes to their money. I value my community, and I value my spiritual life. Okay, there's 5 things. I value all these things, right? The decisions I make on a daily basis have to align with those things. And I think, Michael, what you were talking about is if you're married, if you have a family, I think it's really important that, like, as a unit, it's not just about me. Am I in balance, right? Am I happy? But like there's a system here. It's an ecosystem that I've got these things that are important to me. These things are important to my wife. These things are important to my kids. And somehow we have to maintain some form of harmony, to use your word, Michael. And I like the word alignment. Like, here's what's important to us. Here's my purpose. And is my life decisions on a daily basis, and you can zoom out on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, aligned with that. So for example, if we decide we want to take a nice trip every year, vacation, okay? And it might demand me work a little bit longer hours to be able to fund that vacation. But we deem it as a family, it's important. That's important to us. It's a value. Okay, that decision to work harder, to be out of balance in terms of like, I'm working more than I'm with my family. Hey, that's in alignment with the value. That's cool. I don't know. What do you think about that alignment idea, Matt?
I think
I like that.
alignment's
I
kind of the
just don't think
same.
I don't know that you're out of balance because you're working more to fund a family trip, but I like alignment. Sorry, Michael, interrupted.
So I'll take it like a step further. Instead of just like funding something for your family, like we've grown, I started me and I just ran the business, and then I hired employees. And each time that happened, it was a growing pain, right? So it's like, I know when we're about to make a move, or if we're about to try and grow, there's going to be a time frame where it's just going to be difficult, miserable. But because I've done so many steps, I've expanded the showroom, I've moved to here, I've moved to there, and we've taken on new types of business and taken on new products and having to learn all that stuff and train people and do that. So like each time that comes, I know work is going to take up a lot more of my time. There's going to be a lot more like where I'm kind of checked out, even when I'm at home, because I'm in my head thinking about the next steps. So, but my family has been with me from zero. So like they know everything that we've gone through to get where we are, like, and it hasn't been like miserable or anything like that, but there's times where it's like, all right, dad's checked out for a little bit because he's got so much to do, like he's doing this. So, and we're okay with that. Because in the end, they know me and they know my drive when it comes to certain things. And when I like hone in on something, like I need to go do it and see if I can pull it off. So, and I know I'm like really harping on the work thing here, but the family thing is very important too. I used to coach my oldest son when he played sports. So like there was a time where 4:30 I was out and I was going to coach him. And I'll take you even further back. Like when I first started my business, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like I can kind of do what I want to do. And I love to play golf. And I would play golf 3 to 4 times a week. And I got really, really good at golf. And
Less good at business.
then I realized that, hey, if I put all of this effort into that, like it was thrown off, like I was worried about myself and doing something superficial. Not superficial. I mean, golf's fun, but I was never going to go to the tour. So that was never going to happen, but I was really good at what I did in work. So I rededicated myself to it. And, so it's like you said, where you're at in your life and what you're going through. And
I think that's the blessing and the curse of entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurs, this issue of balance, I think is a little bit harder for us because we recognize that our efforts in business have a direct impact on how much revenue we can drive or income we can make or wealth we can build. So there's this constant kind of battle of, am I working too much? Do I need to work less? Should I work harder? Here's an opportunity. But I think a word that you use, I don't, it's in my notes. I'm not sure if you said it per se, but almost like there's this fluidity. Like we have to be fluid because change is going to happen. At the end of the day, like it's our businesses, right? We're the ones who have to make the decisions. There's no one else making decisions. So there's a little bit more of a demand, I would say, for the small business entrepreneur to be on, quote unquote. Right. And I think that's for the entrepreneur. I think that's the hard part is how do you turn it off?
And the real game changer for an entrepreneur is, I know what, like, my whole outlook on uh being all in all the time on work, like committed to it, is when you have employees and you become close with those employees and they have families, and you get close to those families, and like they depend on, they depend on the decisions you make to provide. So it's like now you have this added family that you're trying, you're making these decisions for as well. So, I know this is off topic of the work-life balance, but it's maybe like the dedication part to like being as efficient as you can in what you do to be able to, make sure that they're good and all of your people are good, like
I
your
think I don't
family,
think that's I don't think that's off at all. I think that's a big part of entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
If you have staff, assuming you care about your staff, right? There's
Right.
an added layer of like, man, like our efforts not just impact my family, but it impacts 5, 6, 7 people who work with me. And then this idea of like, man, yes, the benefit of a business owner is you own the business and you have a little bit more flexibility and privilege than someone who works for the business. But if you care about your staff, then there's this element of like, man, I want them to be able to leave at 4:30 if they're going to coach their kid. Why should that just be a privilege for me? So I think
Right.
the entrepreneur, like I said, I think there's an added. I think this conversation is even more important for us to get clear on what's important to us. So we don't wake up 10, 15 years from now and say, gosh, I was so busy building my business that I didn't get to coach my kid.
Yeah.
And that was important to me.
And, you know, to Dr. Matt's point, like the balance part, I feel like balance is a little bit easier to achieve if you are an employee, because like what your time is. You go in at 8:30, you leave at 4:30, it's all good. You can go home, you can go do this, you can go do that. Whereas like sometimes for us, it might not be 8:30 to 4:30. It might be 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., because you're trying to work through whatever it is, you know. Can I afford to do a 401k for my people? Can I afford to do this through the business? What do we have to do to get to that next step? So you're always
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that stuff. And I think the balance part is more achievable when you're not trying to grow a business, maybe.
All right, Michael. So I think what you're saying is for the entrepreneur, there's a lot more variables that we have to deal with. There's more decisions that we have to make. Where if you work for somebody, a lot of those decisions are made for you. So you're kind of working with you're working with variables that are handed to you. When I first started working as a financial advisor, I worked for another company. They made a lot of decisions for me, what software to use, the investments I had access to. And now as an independent, man, I got a lot more decisions I have to make. And I think that's the difference between entrepreneur versus working for someone is like, when do you stop thinking? There's always ways to like get better to grow the business. And I think that's hard. Matt, I'm really curious to kind of hear your perspective. We've been talking a little bit about like I would say the challenges or obstacles for the entrepreneur. Um, what are your thoughts as you've probably worked with some of your clients or maybe that you've
Yeah.
dealt with yourself?
Yeah, I think the entrepreneur is different than the employee. The employee has a lot more, prescribed time when they have to do something or not do something. And so I do think they're different things. And I do have a lot of clients of both. I think though, for the entrepreneur, there's some important things to remember. One, you get a lot of pride out of building your business. It's an enjoyment for you to build your business, and so there's going to be there may even be a tendency to spend more of your time or resources on the business. Michael, I liked your analogy of the dollar broken into 4 quarters. The problem with the entrepreneurs, they want to spend 75 cents on the business, and so I just think because entrepreneurs enjoy building businesses, they need to remember, save some nickels and dimes for the family. Your family and friends still need you, and your staff needs you as you grow. And so you do have to save some resources for the people. Secondly, all of the people in your life, the people that are important to you, your family, they can absorb busy times. They don't need you all the time. But when they need you, and when you said you were going to be there, they need you to be there. But they can absorb, oh, mom or dad's at a conference this week, or mom or dad's, building out a new office space. They that doesn't phase a family. They just need you to be there when you said you were going to be there. Third, they'll be really proud of your work, actually. They'll be proud to say, my dad, my mom, my parent built this thing, as long as they don't get sacrificed in the process.
Hmm.
What hurts them is when they go, that all they did was spend time at the business. I
I
never
don't want
saw
to interrupt your points, but can we sit in point 3 really quick? Because you said something that made me think of something, this idea of so long as they're not sacrificed in the process. And I love listening to these. There's 2 podcasts that I really enjoy. I'm listening to one now, one I used to listen to a long time ago. One's called How I Built This, and they would interview entrepreneurs and they would talk about how they built different businesses, right? And businesses like Slack, how Slack got built, how those edible designs, those edible arrangements, right? I remember them interviewing that guy.
Yeah.
Really obscure businesses. And then recently I'm listening to another podcast called Founders. And the podcast host is interviewing founders of big companies. These are not small people. I mean, he interviewed Charlie Munger of Berkshire Hathaway on one of the episodes. But it seems a recurring theme of these really high performing, ambitious entrepreneurs that built a business, highly successful business. And along the way, they lost their family, they sacrificed their family. And somewhere along the way, they realized, wait a minute, relationships are important to me, and have rekindled relationships with their family that they may have sacrificed in the process.
Yeah.
And there seems to be almost this idea that, like, man, like if they wouldn't have done what they did by sacrificing their family, they would have never built that big business. So maybe sometimes there's these narratives or these stories that we tell ourselves that, like, I am building this business for my family because of me spending all this time and traveling and building a business, my family has a better life. They have a better house, they have better vacations, but they don't have me. They don't have you.
Yeah.
Where's that line? I think that's the
Yeah.
quote unquote balance maybe that we're searching for, scratching for.
Yeah. And the word that's been coming to my mind about this is rhythm. Finding a rhythm that brings you back to relationships. The entrepreneur has a natural rhythm that gets them, going about their business, but they need a rhythm that brings them back to the relationship. Just as an example of this, I mean, Michael told a perfect example where he wanted to spend time with his kid. It aligned with his value as a dad to coach his kid, and so he created a rhythm where he went to work hard. Went to work. First, he worked out in the morning, got up early and worked out. Then he went to work and worked hard, and then at 4:30 he could slip away and go be with his kid. And then that probably also meant that about 8:30, 9 o'clock, he was back doing some final bits of work for the day. So he had a rhythm in his life that brought him back to people. And, that can be, I think there needs to be to the extent that we can, a daily rhythm of that, even if that's just, let me make sure I see my kids when they get home from school, or let me make sure I see my kids before they go to bed. It needs to be a weekly rhythm. Let's make sure that we have a few dinners together a week, whatever the modern, whatever works for your context. There's no prescription here. I'm not saying do this or don't do that. There needs to be a yearly rhythm of, we try to get away and do these things together. And if you just cultivate those rhythms, they'll bring you back. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be set in stone. You don't have to do the same thing every year. It changes weekly. It changes seasonally. It changes as your kids develop and age. My kids are now at a stage where I don't see them as much anymore. They're teenagers, but we really try to get together for at least a family meal on the weekend. That's a newer thing for us, but it's becoming a rhythm for us. Just
Yeah.
cultivate this rhythm that brings you back to relationships.
Right. I don't think there's any you know, everybody's plan isn't going to work for everybody. You know,
Right.
like your plan isn't going to work for Eric. Eric's plan isn't going to work for me. In the same way, I have a 17 and a 9-year-old, you know, son. So, um, they're at different phases in their life. You know, like you said, the 17-year-old, I wait up till 9:15 when he gets back from training, and we hang out for an hour and chat, and he tries to beat me up and stuff. So I mean, like, still that. And you know, whereas like my 9-year-old, I'm home at like, you know, 5:36, and I get to hang out with him during that time. What, he's
Yeah.
just a different kid. You know, he's a different kid than my older one. So like his interests are different. So like I try and do things with him, or, you know, and then there's the Pelican games that I have to go to with my friends. So it's always working, you know, that in. But yeah, like it's like you said, the rhythm thing, and like, you know, spending time with your spouse, spending time with, you know, trying to take some things off of them when you get home, you know, like
Yeah.
you know, maybe cooking 3 or 4 nights a week versus sitting around waiting, or like, you know, just things like that. And um, so I like that word, rhythm.
I
I
think,
like that a lot.
yeah. So a couple things there. I just want to kind of signpost here that you said, Michael. Then I want to come back to something that Matt was talking about and get his perspective. If I can keep all these thoughts straight. Uh, you talk about your kids being different kids. I think that's really important, is to recognize that the people in our life, if we're in relationship, okay, Matt, this is what I want you to comment on after I kind of get these thoughts out. If you're in relationship, I think it's, if you're an entrepreneur in relationship with other people, i.e., family, maybe even staff. As entrepreneurs, we tend to be, we generally, I'm not gonna say we're all type A, but we are decision makers. Okay. And I think if you're in relationship with other people, you got to recognize that, like, maybe sometimes you don't always have to be the decision maker, and that you give up some of maybe that decision authority, so to speak, to other people in your, I'm trying to use Matt's language here, you know, systems, in your family systems, right? That maybe you give your 9-year-old Michael some authority in some of your time. Let him dictate to you what's important to him, and then making sure that you're meeting him, because you might think what's important to him, but you might be totally off.
Let me jump in real quick. So recently, you know, my oldest, I have easy time connecting with him because, you know, he does a lot of the same things I do. Whereas like River, my younger one, we connect on certain things, but sometimes it's a little, uh, you know, he's into the iPad, he's into the Minecraft, he's in the Roblox, he's into playing that kind of stuff with his friends. But like one day I asked him, I said, "Hey, look, you don't need to tell me any answers right now, but list out 4 things that if I couldn't tell you no, like what would you want to do? Like what?" And so he's like, "All right." So he went to school, came back that day, and I was like, "Did you think of anything?" He's like, "Yeah, I want you to show me how to cook." He's like, "Cook steak all the time." I'm like,
Mhm.
"All right, well, that's easy." So like one day he was in the back playing. I'm like, "Hey, I'm about to start prepping. Why don't you come cook?" He's like, "Ah." I'm like, "No, no, no. Remember, you had it on your list." He's like, "Yeah, you're right." So he came in there, and you know, we got down to it, and it was nice. It was fun. It was something silly, but like doesn't always have to be like the big things, like you said. Like it doesn't have to be
Right.
events or stuff like that. But you know, that was something that we had, and you know, we share a lot of this of other interests too. We watch different programs together that he likes. So, you know, back to your point though, it's those little bitty things that you could find like that rhythm for with them, and you know, make those, even if it's 30 minutes, make those quality memories, I guess.
Matt,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, you were, yeah, you were talking, Eric, about letting the people in your life dictate some of the how you spend your resources, how you spend your time. And you were specifically, Eric, talking about your kids, and Michael, you gave an example of that. For the entrepreneur that doesn't have kids, they do have friends. They have other family people that they love, and so it is reaching out to those people and asking those people, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I mean, the entrepreneur is so driven towards deciding and building and choosing that sometimes they need to leave some space to let other people decide or choose or dictate how they'll spend their time. Yeah, I yesterday ran into one of my kids out in public, and he was having a meal with another friend of his, which is, I don't do this. This doesn't happen to me very often. Ran into my kid in public, and so I just, they kind of invited me to sit down, and I took a few minutes to sit down and just chat with them and talk with them. So I was doing something on their turf that they were doing. I didn't make them do it my way. I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't schedule it or book it. I responded to them, and I think that that's an opportunity that entrepreneurs can take, since you can't be there all the time and you can't be there at every scheduled time. Leave enough. I want to come back to this point, but leave enough margin in your life and in your day that you can respond to needs as they pop up. You can be present.
Let's sit right there now, because you brought up a word that I think is really, really important, is margin. And I just had this conversation with a buddy of mine who's a serial entrepreneur, run multiple companies, um, high performing, high energy, and the conversation was specific to building margin. Like if you have, let's go back to Michael's analogy, which I think is really good. If you have $1 to spend, maybe you only spend 90 cents and leave 10 cents because you never know what's going to come up. You never know who's going to need your time. And the worst thing is like if someone needs you and you're just too busy. That's going to happen, of course, but like I'll give you a really good example. Um, this was years ago. Matt's office was near to where my office is, and there's a Buffalo Wild Wings not too far from here. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I think Tuesdays and Thursdays or Wednesdays and Thursdays during Champion League season, it's in European
You've told
soccer.
this story a few times on podcasts, so don't try to get all the details exactly right.
That's okay. No. We would go catch a game, have a beer, catch a game, then we'd go back to work. I remember calling Matt one day. We weren't planning on meeting, and I'm like, Matt, are you free? Can we go? There's a game on. Let's go grab a beer and talk. And he's like, yeah, what's up? I said, Jen and I had a fight with Jen, and I just need to talk. So Jen's my wife, for those who don't know. So Matt's like, yeah, I got time. I'll meet you there in 15 minutes. So we went there and we watched the game and we chatted, and um, Matt gave some, good couples counseling, for me as an individual, what I needed to do to make the situation right. But if Matt didn't have that time built into his schedule, I know Matt values friendships. Matt had some margin in his time to where he could give me a little bit more time that particular day when I needed him. And I think that idea of margin is hugely important. I talk about that in finances all the time. Have financial margin. You never know what's going to happen. If you don't have financial margin, you have all kinds of bad things that can happen financially.
Mm-hmm.
So relational margin, I think, is something that helps us maintain balance. We don't have to spend all of our time to be in harmony, to be in equilibrium, to be in balance. In fact, not spending all of our time is probably something good that makes us feel a little bit more fulfilled.
Yeah. Let me comment on that. So a few things about this. Michael, you were saying something really important earlier about that when we're at work, we need to work. We need to be efficient with our work. We need to be efficient with our time. We need to work when we're at work. Be productive. That if you work at work, then you don't have to work so much when you're not at work. Just work.
Like you were reading my mind. I just wrote a note. It says, entrepreneurs, we don't work all of the time. Like we were sitting here talking about it, I'm realizing it's like we seem like we're like work, but like there is an off switch. But continue on.
But there's an off switch if you've done the work for the day at work. If you fiddled around and you scrolled through Instagram or TikTok, as I love to do, then you probably did not do all the work that you should have done. Just work. Just go to work and work so that you can flip a switch at some point and be home. Secondly, though, all entrepreneurs need time off to be more productive. most of our good ideas, most of our like next level planning and energy comes from downtime and leisure time. So you're going to need some breaks anyway. So going back now to the 4 quarters and a dollar thing, um, I think, and my friends have always sort of lovingly made fun of me that I don't work enough. I try to like only commit 50 cents of my dollar to my stuff. That way I have a good 50 cents uncommitted to anything at any one time so that I can do something different. It generally gets spent, not always, but it usually gets spent on something. But I like to have unplanned time,
Mhm.
uncommitted resources, both for my work and for me and for my family, so that I can do other things. And I think it's that kind of margin. Now, it's 50% for me. Eric, you use the 90%. I think that's too much, but
I just threw that number out
you might
arbitrarily.
think 50% not enough. But I think in Michael's great analogy, 75 cents is probably about right. Spend 75 cents on your work, yourself, and your relationships, and
Mhm.
keep 25% for that phone call. I'm getting deeper and existential again, though. For that phone call of your friend who just lost their spouse, or your parent who just got diagnosed with cancer, or your employee who is going through a horrendous thing, or the car wreck that just happened. You got to have 25% available to respond to things that you didn't even plan for. Or when those things happen and you respond because you're that kind of person, then you're going to feel out of balance. That's when people start to feel like, crap, my work-life balance is, I'm all, I've been for the last month, I've been discombobulated running back and forth from here to Houston. Well, you were already at 90 or 95%. You didn't even
Yeah,
have any
but
room.
Matt, okay,
Mhm.
let me just play the
And look. I know I'm sounding very idealistic, but
yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying, most Americans, most American workers and entrepreneurs probably work too much and don't save enough back
mhm.
to respond to needs that they haven't planned for.
Hmm.
That knocks
So
them off
okay.
balance a lot.
So let me just ask a very practical, maybe a little bit more tactical question here. So we're talking the strategy here is to like leave margin in your life, but like practically and tactically, how do I do that, Matt? I've got kids, I've got staff, I've got business demands. I mean, come
Yeah.
on, right? How am I going to
Yeah.
leave 25% of my time? Like, what am I doing? You know?
Right. Well, I mean, Michael stopped playing golf. I stopped playing golf for a time period too, because it was
Yeah.
taking, that's a margin I could create by
Mhm.
stop doing something. A, I can work, I mean, B, I can work a lot more efficiently at work. When I'm at work, I work. If it ain't making money at work, I don't want to be doing it. I want to be efficient. Like I want to be ruthlessly efficient at work. C, I want to create systems and use technology well to facilitate work and not work. I'm now bifurcating it into work and not work. Okay. But I want to create systems and use technology well to uh, make or facilitate work and not work. D, I want to make special time for special people in my life. And that usually doesn't mean a day or even an hour, Michael, you said. It usually is like 20 minutes is a golden period of time for people who love you. If you will sit down and have a cup of coffee with someone for 20 minutes, if you will teach your kid how to cook a steak for 20 minutes, if you will go and watch your kid's game for 20 minutes, but don't look at your phone, watch your kid,
Mhm.
they will feel like you were really present for them. So make special time for special people. And then just, recognize that the clock is ticking on your life. You don't know how long it's ticking. So uh, it's your life, it's your story. Write it well.
So a couple things on that. Number one, if you spend 20 minutes cooking a steak, you overcooked it. Just want to get that out. Um,
I like it. Well done, please.
Prep time. Prep time. Come on.
okay, prep time.
You got to
Um,
let that baby rest.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think there's something really important here that I think it's a challenge to us. And I think this is where we feel, I think this is why we feel out of balance. It's almost a sense of unfulfillment, because I don't think that a lot of us have stopped long enough to identify what's really important to us. Like, what are deep down, what are my values? What do I really care about? And then do the hard work of, let me reflect on my time. Let me reflect on the decisions I'm making, and find the areas that are not, go back to my word, that are not in alignment. They're not congruent. They're out of harmony with what's important to me. Because Matt, you value relationships. Someone else, they may value relationships, but not to the extent that you do, right? They might need more quiet time. There's something else. So I think that, Michael, I think you said this earlier, that like, we're all, as entrepreneurs, we're all at different seasons, at different stages of life, different stages of our business, different stages of relationships. And there will be demands at different stages where we have to be a little bit, out of balance, maybe.
Or you have to be fluid. You have to just be able to recognize what's happening and what's coming, and be able to react, because that's all part of being a business owner, an entrepreneur, whatever, you want to call yourself. And it's never going to be like when things are going well, you just got to prep yourself for knowing something's about to happen. There's going to be a curve. There's going to be something, because there will always be something, whether it's in life, whether it's in work. And, being able to
store up some hay for the winter. You better store some hay while you got it. Yeah.
And, and maybe you're working towards that. Maybe you're like hiring that new person that's going to be able to, take some things off of your plate that's going to allow you to have that little bit extra hay. If it gets, if it gets a little hairy down the line.
Yeah. I think this idea of storing up, it's kind of like the same idea of margin, is having something extra just in case you need it. And there will be times in your life where you'll have less margin, and times in your life when you have more margin. And I think, Matt, I think you're right. It's those times where we don't have any margin where we feel out of balance. And the more margin we have, we feel more, air quotes, in balance. Do you find that to be the case, Matt? Would that be a fairly accurate comment, maybe?
Yeah. I think that feeling in balance has something to do with feeling like I can respond to the various needs in my life. And Michael used the word fluid. Being able to respond is fluidity, or flexibility is a word I use a lot of times, being able to be flexible. That, though, flexibility is built on the backs of margin. You cannot be flexible if you don't have space, if you don't have a little extra. And so I think you have to create a system in your life as you're building and growing and achieving and accomplishing and crushing it. You've got to create a system that still protects some unspent resource of your time, of your energy, of your thoughts, of your money.
I like that.
And so you, when it's needed, when you can call upon it, it's there. Like, I ride dirt bikes in the summer, and we will fill up our gas tanks with gas and go out and ride. And, we don't mind if we spend all of that gas riding. It's fine, but we don't want to run out of gas. And our gas tanks have a little lever on them that you switch the lever, and it opens up a new little portion of the gas tank called the reserve. That's a system that someone thought of and built into the design so that you don't run out of gas. It's margin.
Oh, how do we build that system into our lives, man? That's cool.
That means that you look at your calendar and you leave reserve. You leave some podcasting time, you leave some writing time, some sleeping time, some thinking time, some reading time, some lunches. You leave some time for that. Like, I ran into my kid in public yesterday. I had 15 minutes to sit down and talk. Maybe I didn't, maybe I was busy that day and I didn't have 15 minutes, but I try to leave little places in my life so that I can respond to opportunities.
The Pelicans game.
Things.
The Pelicans game that we were talking about that led into this conversation. Like, I think an hour before the game, Matt, what are you doing for dinner? Meet me at Company Burger. Let's grab a burger. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Right. So we
Let
had,
me
we had a little bit of a margin.
let me beat up on a profession for a second.
Mhm.
My bread and butter counseling couples therapy practice is built on the backs of attorneys, attorney couples. Attorneys have come to me for the last 15 years, and the younger ones start out by saying, God, we work all the time. We work all the time. And their spouses are pissed off because it's like they never see their partner. Their partner works 70 hours a week. And they almost say it like with a sense of pride and accomplishment. Yeah, I'm knocked out 70 hours this week. Those guys are so stressed out and their relationships are so frayed. And then, I'm at a place in my life now where I mostly meet with attorneys who are partners in their practices or own the law firm. And those guys and ladies are saying, that crowd is saying, I don't know why we do that to associates. I don't know why we do that to junior associates. It's so mean. It is so uncalled for. There's no need to work, to make a person work 70 hours a week for the first several years of their profession. That's just a system that they put in place, like culturally, that's unnecessary.
Mm.
And it's why there's so many relationship problems. It's why I'm in business. So many relationship problems in the legal profession. They built a system that extinguishes margin, that uses it all up. Now, Michael, you were talking about the 30-year-old, 29-year-old entrepreneur earlier, and I'm picturing this person in my head because I also know them. They need to be out there working and crushing it and building and achieving. That person needs to be accomplishing, right?
Yes.
But if they have a little baby, they're going to want to see that baby walk too. And they don't have to be there for the very first step. That's okay. But they want to see those first few steps. They want to see their kid learn to walk. And so all I would be coaching that young entrepreneur to do is leave enough margin while you're out there crushing it and accomplishing. Leave enough margin so as your kid is living their own life step by step, you can be there for some of those steps along the way. That's all.
It's good. I like that. I made three kind of notes to summarize as we kind of come to the end of our time here because we spent all my margin for the day. And I want to see if yeah, I came into this conversation kind of having an idea of what we're going to talk about, and I'm leaving with something different than I thought I was going to get from this. And three things that I wrote down, or to be more concise. So we talk about work-life balance. Three things that are really important. Number one is this idea of margin, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, Matt. That wasn't on my radar coming into this conversation. But leave time, available time to do things that are important. So you don't spend all the time that you have. Number two, and Michael, you talked about this idea of seasons, right? The young entrepreneur, we're kind of at a different stage in our life. We can take time and spend an hour podcasting where, 10 years ago, this was valuable time. We couldn't podcast, right? So business and life is seasonal, and maybe we shouldn't measure, to use the term work-life balance, in terms of days and weeks, but maybe we measure in terms of quarters, months, years, as we reflect on our time. This is a season of more work. This is a season, when my kids are under the age of 5, I might be able to work a little bit more in the evenings. As my kids go to grade school and involved in sports, I'm going to be a little bit more involved maybe in the evenings and sports and whatnot. So we see our life in bigger chunks of time as we measure balance. And then the third thing is this idea of values. And I think, Michael, you talked about priorities earlier, is, hey, what's important to you? Make sure that is in balance, right? Or it's aligned. What I'm doing with my time is in alignment. If family is important, am I spending time with my family? Am I giving my family what they need? If my staff's important, am I giving my staff what's important? If health is important, am I giving my health what's important? So this idea of margin, seasons of life and measuring balance over a long period of time, and this idea of identifying values. What are your thoughts on those three things? Am I missing anything?
I think you nailed them all. I mean, I still think that like it's a very personal um it's a very personal thing when it comes to like what's like where the things need to be, you know, it depends on there's a lot of things that you have to take into, I think, account when you're laying out that dollar, laying out those quarters. But I think the most important thing, what Matt said, was keeping that little reserve. And like I told myself when I started, like I would never miss anything for my kids, like school stuff, all the things, because like that's the things they remember. And I make an effort to never miss anything. And in my thought process in that is whatever's happening at work can wait an hour. It'll be fine. Like, you know, it's not gonna fall through. Nothing's gonna, you know, it can be salvaged in an hour if there's a problem, you know. I also give my employees that same opportunity. Like they have kids or they have like things they need to do. Go do them because I'm gonna go do it. Like I'm not gonna miss my kids recital or kids thing at school or whatever it is because of work. Like we've created this, you know, this business and we have like people in the business that we can depend on. So like we just had one of our employees get married. She's on her honeymoon and she was out, you know, half the week last week and it was awesome. And I dedicated myself to taking her role on. And so I've been doing everything that she usually does and everything's just rolling. Cause at the end of the day, like I do know how to do these things still. Sometimes my employees might not think that, but you know, sometimes I got to step in every once in a while and remind them.
Yeah, that's good.
Show them who's
But
boss.
you know, it's just that thing of like, what's important to you? You know, like what was important to me is A, growing my business, B, having it be able to make, you know, potentially being able to leave something down the line for my kids, but also like making a life for my employees, making that kind of stuff. And also like being there for my spouse, my kids, my family, you know, like if they needed it. I may force that margin every once in a while and work might suffer a tad, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm okay with that. You might not be, Dr. Matt might not be, but like I compartmentalize things like that very well. Like it's over here, I'm over here, that can wait, you know, and vice versa, you know. Family might have a superficial thing going on. It's like the sky is falling and it's like, well, it's really not. Y'all will be okay for a second. I'll be there in an hour, you know. So it's really like where you are and what how you can deal with those things on a daily basis.
I'm gonna make one quick comment. Then I'm gonna give Matt a closing thought here. I think it's really important, Michael, and I want to emphasize this idea that we're different. People are different. What works for me is not going to work for you, and that's one thing I've always appreciated about my relationship with Matt is Matt, and I guess this is counselor training. I've learned a lot from him. Is you don't project your value onto someone else, right? It's really important to understand what's important to them as you try to figure out this idea of balance. Matt, Dr. Dr. Matthew Morris, could you give us a
That's what my mom
closing
calls me.
thought? Dr. Matthew?
Dr. Matthew. Yeah, I mean, you all are saying a lot of important things that I wish I heard more people say who are in your shoes and are entrepreneurs and are business owners and people who are trying to find balance. I mean, even though this started off as a conversation where we weren't agreeing on the word balance, what we can agree on is we all want a life that is fulfilling to us and those around us. And so it's been enjoyable to hear you all share how you've accomplished that in your own life. And so I guess the final point for me is I want to go back to the beginning and just remind us that the clock's ticking, that you have, this is your life. This is it. Are you enjoying it? Do the people who love you, do your loved ones feel cherished? And are you producing enough for the life you want to live?
That's good.
And if not, something could probably be a little bit more in balance.
That's good, man. I appreciate y'all for taking time today. And let me just add one other thing. Get yourself some really good friends. That really helps. That, like, in all seriousness,
right.
good
Yep.
friends. When you surround yourself with good people, we act as kind of a friction.
Sounding board.
Not
And
just
that,
well, a sounding board, but like friction, like someone who's going to keep
right.
you in line. It's like the it might have been you, Mike. I was talking about, like, you talking about bowling with the little bumpers on the
Yep.
we're like bumpers, right? We keep each other from going too far in one way or another. And I think that's important. So, man, I am thankful to count you two guys as friends. I've always said, if we measured net worth in terms of the quality of relationships that we build over our life, I am freaking Warren Buffett when I look at my bank account of friends. So you two are certainly some of the greatest assets that I have in my life. So I appreciate y'all, and thanks again for taking time.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.